Hey, legends, and welcome back. Today, we had a great conversation with Steve Smith and Tripp Westbrook from Firehouse Agency based out of Dallas, Texas.
We are talking about unconventional marketing and what it takes to be brave and lead your charge in the market today.
Talked about culture, we talked about aligning business results, um, what it looks like to be courageous and bold in 2025 and beyond.
And we have an exciting announcement about an event that we're co hosting in Dallas on May 8th. And if you're in the area, you do not want to miss out on this.
Let's get into it.
Let's get into it. Give us a quick summary of the Firehouse philosophy. I think the thing that has made us feel like kindred spirits across the expanse of North America here is kind of how you guys think about marketing, what you guys think good looks like, really lines up with what we've heard from our speakers and participants at the gathering over the years.
Tripp, take the lead on that one.
Yeah. So for us, this is really look, I think when we first met you guys and we were there and we saw the content and it just felt like kismet on some level because seeing the speakers, seeing the content was very much playing from our playbook, which is, hey, bravery, courageous, advertising, being bold, being unconventional in how you approach things. That's really at the core of our approach and how we do things. And how we engage with our clients is how we engage with our people. And that sort of mindset, that whole birds of a feather, we found that with you guys. And it only felt natural that we would start to spend more and more time together in a partnership.
Yeah, and the truth is, being unconventional, I don't even think of as a philosophy or an approach. I think of it almost as an obligation. Uh, that's what we owe our clients. Right now, the media landscape is so muddy, so crowded, that the only thing that's going to draw attention is movement that's different from everybody else. So I think that's part of what we owe the brands that we work with.
Yeah, it's funny that it even needs to be said at times, but it's perhaps something that's become more important. Like the barriers of entry to advertising or marketing in general have really fallen over the last 20 years, and it's been great in a lot of ways. But one of the side effects of it is the lengths that a brand needs to go to stand out are even greater now than they were when there was only 500 businesses or brands that were actively advertising or actively marketing. And so as that's happened, just having a bigger budget is like not enough. It's not just like about density or like number impressions or exposures. It actually is about your message or the way that you're coming to market.
Well, and the crazy thing is the bigger budget just means you're making more wallpaper sometimes. And that's a problem. And the habits that brands and industries have gotten into over the years um, are really just bad habits of step and repeat. And when things get more competitive, it's more important to step out and to do something different than your competitive set is. And as you say, it's strange to say, to even have to talk about it, that it needs to happen because it seems obvious. But I also understand that the way clients often approach things is sometimes very risk averse, and doing something different can feel scary. But on the other hand, you know, what if you don't do it? What if you don't stand out and you end up in this slow slide to kind of anonymity? And Steve and I, we talk about all the time how, from a human point of view, the eye and the brain is drawn to movement. And so, when it comes to brands, there has to be sort of a metaphorical movement by the brand to help consumers' eyes catch it and see it. Otherwise, you sort of get, brand blind on some level. So,
Which is
you know,
why I say it's not really a choice, it's a mandate. I mean, to choose not to do it is to choose to be wallpaper.
Is there a particular, whether it's a client story or a brand that you're working on, where you can really just share how you've helped them challenge convention, how you've helped them step out of the norm and think differently, and how it's paid off for them?
Sure, I'll take an older brand that we worked with a little time ago, and then I'm sure Tripp's got examples as well. We spent what 13, 14 years as the agency for interstate batteries. They were a brand that, like so many others, did exactly what everybody else in the category did. They shouted about power and cold cranking amps and things that didn't really matter to their audience. And it was through digging in and really understanding what mattered that we got to something that I think was revolutionary for them. I mean, this idea of owning dependability, an emotional benefit, not the functional things the category talked about. And I will tell you, it is a drum that we beat consistently over a period of years. And throughout that period, right, we did tracking research, we watched the business perform. We had year over year of record sales, but beyond that, in the course of a period of years, you saw the brand become associated in research with the benefit that ultimately was the high ground for the category. But it took somebody stepping out and saying, I'm willing to do something differently before anybody could take that high ground.
yeah, and that's a super interesting case, and I won't belabor it because Steve just talked about it. But the idea that people, I mean, the key piece of research was that people don't care about their battery. They don't think about their battery. They don't talk about their battery until their battery doesn't work. And so what people care about is getting to where they want to be. So we use that insight. And I mean, over that 14 years, I can probably count on one hand the number of times we showed a battery in the advertising. And the reason for that is because people, I mean, most cars these days, you don't even know where the battery is in the car due to weight and balance. So let's advance the conversation and talk about the things that consumers actually care about, which is not being stuck, not being stranded, getting to where they want to be. And that was super, super important for that brand. I think another, and we always find that we call them sometimes grudge purchases, things that people don't necessarily want to buy but have to. Um, one of our clients is Lennox HVAC, and you look at that category, and for so long, it's mostly been kind of engineer stories. What's in the gray boxes that sit outside people's homes and why they're more efficient or why they're more special in this widget or that widget. When we first started working with that brand, we kind of pivoted and talked about, and this was sort of into and coming out of COVID as well, but the emphasis on the air you breathe and the impact that it has on your health and your comfort and your ability to sleep. And work with them to shift their positioning. Their tagline now is "Air is life, make it perfect." So that's one of those opportunities that we saw to stop talking about the technology in the gray boxes and start talking about what people actually care about, which is, hey, am I comfortable when I go to sleep at night? Is there a bunch of pollen and dust in the air that I breathe? Is the humidity right? And getting into this idea of how the air in your home impacts your life as opposed to just simply, you know, heating, cooling, comfort. I mean, yes, those are things that we have to talk about on some level, but let's get to the human part. Let's get to the emotional part of something that is typically seen as a very rational thing to sell.
Yeah, I think like brand rationalization is like the culprit so often, where a brand is trying to explain why it exists or why it's at a certain price point, and it does so in its own language, like how many
Yeah.
BTUs, or it
Mhm.
expects the customer or the audience to come and become familiar with the language of an air conditioning unit, or familiar with the language of a furnace, or whatever it might be. Like, to your point, it's like engineers writing this ad, as opposed to like, speak in the language of your customer. If you can speak in the language of your customer, you
Mhm.
can actually touch on the places that they are. Where would they naturally think about a purchase, or where would they naturally think about the benefit or the end result of working with someone? Whether it's a bad, boring categories to me are the most
Totally.
fun to work in, because they're the ones, like, it feels like everyone's asleep in these boring
Yeah.
categories, and they're just doing whatever their sales sheet becomes their billboard or
It's a
whatever.
necessary purchase or whatever, but
Yeah, you have to
from
have
grudge
these.
purchase to
Yeah.
feel good purchase. I love
Totally.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and Steve, you know this as well as I do. The idea of taking something that on its surface is unemotional and putting emotion in it, because emotion is what's sticky for consumers, and emotion is what builds loyalty and connection and, you know, energy. Because, you know, if you simply devolve to a rational argument, well, somebody's going to top that at some point. They'll build it a little better or a little cheaper or a little bigger or a little small, whatever it is, but it's the emotion behind it that gets people attached to it.
And that you can own, I mean, over
Yeah.
time, whereas all those other things are commodities to a degree.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Totally.
What is the, like, I've heard a term in the past, like brand rehab. It's like almost like a brand has to like get off of the sauce that they've been on, or get out of the way that they've been coming to market.
Yeah. What's
Like,
the plan?
yeah, when you come into a relationship like that, what are the conversations that you're having with the marketing leaders, the decision makers at your clients, to try to encourage them to buck convention?
I think first, I mean, we always start, we have a phrase internally that we say strategy first. I think what that really means is making sure that there's clarity, alignment on what it is you're trying to achieve. What are the KPIs? What does success look like? Because until you get that established, you don't know what your playing field is and where you can pivot and where you can be unconventional. So I think you have to start there, right? Alignment on those things. And that gives you, I think, some latitude to then say, okay, how do we go about getting to these objectives in a way that's different, in a way that's going to get the attention we're looking for?
Yeah. And I think that's super important. I think the other piece of that is just being honest and being transparent about what the problem is and what the needs are. Um, we have solved a lot of problems just by being consumers ourselves. There was a brand that we worked with called Nothing Bundt Cakes, and they were, they advertised during, the holidays and birthdays and all of these special occasions, and they had more business they can handle on those special occasions, but it was all the times in between that, they were like, we really need your help. We really need your help. And so for us, we know, and because they were a client, we would have cake, their product, in the kitchen of our offices here on a semi-regular basis. And one of the things we started to notice was that whenever a cake showed up, people's moods immediately, oh, what's this? What do we have going on here? I mean, it really did change people's moods. And so we started to take that, and Steve and his group started to mess with it and pull that putty and really try to grind down in it and figure it out. And we got to this position of cake changes everything. It can make bad days better and good days brighter. And so then it became, okay, well, if the whole point of the cake is to make someone's day better, then it became less about a sweet treat and an indulgence for me and more of an altruistic thing to give to someone else. And that really started to pivot the way that people saw it. Even buy one get one coupons, well, they now became buy one give one. Instead of a double indulgence for me, it's something to share. So there are things about, it doesn't have to be big or earth changing or any of that sort of thing. It really just has to be human and relevant. And to your point about when we engage in these things, one of the first things we do, we set up almost like a war room in one of our conference rooms, and we put up all the competitive work, and we just surround even our clients' work. We surround ourselves in that to understand what are the predominant themes that are being talked about in these categories, and do they align with what consumers really care about. And so the idea of challenging convention or breaking rules, it's one thing to just break rules just to be contrarian and disruptive, but the real trick to this whole thing is understanding which rules to keep and which rules to break. And so by surrounding ourselves with the work and seeing the thematics, and Owen, to your point, that the idea of the habits that these people are doing just because the engineers are really excited about this one widget, well, it's our job from the outside to say, love that you're passionate about your product. how do we take that passion and turn it into something that a consumer is going to get excited about because they have a different lens on it than they do?
It's not about the cake, it's about the connection.
Yeah, totally.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
What is it really about? Yeah.
It's about the calories, really. But
I mean,
so good. So good.
Yeah, like I think the other thing is like it one of my observations is like who does marketing report up into? Like sometimes marketing really does come from the CEO, and it's like the CEO is of the mindset that that's the way that they're going to win. Other times it feels like marketing reports into like the CFO or it reports into the uh heaven forbid it reports into legal or something like
Oh,
that,
God.
right? Like so you know, part of the job, I would say, of like a great relationship, like a great partnership with an agency or with a group of creatives or whatever it might be, is to arm the internal team to win internal buy-in on something like this. So I'm curious if you have any like stories or examples where like the battle was actually won internally to go and take that brave step into market and reposition.
Steve, what do you think?
I know, I'm thinking. Um, I mean, my response to that is, I think alignment all the way to the top is absolutely critical. I mean, our greatest successes have been those times when, throughout the organization, all the way to the CEO level, there was support and even better kind of alignment behind what it is we were trying to achieve. Um, in terms of a good example of how you get somebody there, Tripp, do you have one?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I have anything off the top of my head, but the I think the most important thing for us as an agency is also understanding who we work with and who we don't work with.
Mm.
Um, I mean, there are certain organizations, certain clients that just aren't wired to take those kinds of steps, either because of how they're structured or because of how they're incentivized or any of those kinds of things. I think, you know, you sort of get the agency that you deserve or that you need based upon the mindset that you have internally. And I think that's one area where advertising agencies and clients sometimes end up butting heads because one is constantly trying to change the other in a relationship, and that's a really, really difficult thing to do. So, I know for us, when we talk to new clients, we try and ask a lot of questions and we try and get a sense as best we can about, hey, is this going to work? Or is the brand leaning forward in its seat? Are they playing to win versus playing not to lose? Are they, do they have the DNA to be brave and to go for it and to really unlock all of the exponential benefits that come with stepping out and being different in their category? And
Yeah.
hey, I'm sure that if we made the decision to take every dollar bill that was waved in front of us, I'm sure we'd be, many times bigger than we are currently. But those types of engagements end up feeling very transactional. And I think we do our best work when we as an agency are emotionally invested in the work that we're doing on our client's behalf. And so between client and agency, we feel like one unit moving forward to push and advance the ball.
And I think that playing to win mindset has got to, and this is the point I made before about alignment, it's got to go throughout the organization. Because if you've got a CMO who's got a play to win attitude, but they ultimately are fighting battles within their own halls in terms of advancing the ball and doing something differently, you're going to spend a whole lot of time trapped in that little tedium right there. But you get an organization that top to bottom says, hey, we are here to compete, we're here to win. And if it requires doing something differently in order to achieve that, we're all about it. Then you can get to success quite quickly.
Yeah. That's one of the things we loved about sort of the Gathering conference and our, when we were first exposed to it many years ago, we saw surrounding us a whole bunch of brands and marketers that kind of had that mindset. And that was super, super exciting to know that, hey, here's a group of people that are trying to do what we're trying to do. And let's learn from each other and let's figure out how we can advance all our balls together and have an impact on the industries and the brands that we represent.
Totally. How do we play to win in 2025? I mean, consumer behavior, marketing world, like everything is shifting so rapidly. What does a winning mindset look like in 2025 for a brand?
Well, it's funny. I think you just said it, right? When things are shifting that rapidly, it's about being nimble, being flexible, being willing to pivot and to take all the signals, from a changing marketplace and being able to interpret them and say, hey, this is kind of put some lights on in terms of the direction that we're going to go. But I think, in an environment that is changing, the thing that's most valuable is being attuned to it and knowing how to respond on an ongoing basis.
Mm. Yeah, I think about what you're saying. Like, there's nothing wrong. We're all in business competitively. We're all in business to compete. But the moment that you make your decisions aligned to what your competitors are doing, your your first thing is to compete with the others in your market, as opposed to actually competing to connect with an audience. I think you've lost already. Like if you're trying to get an edge, if you're trying to have even if, like, a focus on competitive advantage, I find too often will just leads to like really derivative forms of communication and derivative forms of marketing. The best brands out there seem to be laser focused on who they want to connect with, who is our audience, and they're competing at a human level rather than like at a corporate level, if that makes sense. I don't want to sound like a socialist. It's not like competition is the best thing about our like our market, but it's not. It's like, who are you or what are you competing for? If you can answer that question in an effective way, I think you're already 10 steps ahead of everybody else.
And I think
Well,
go ahead, Steve.
I was going to say, I think for us, one of the greatest forms of flattery is when the opposite happens. So we don't lead brands to be derivative and copy others, but instead set a path where the category starts to respond and copy us.
Right.
We always know that we're on to something there. Now, it also pushes us to say, okay, what's next? Where do we go from here? But when a category starts to shift to mimic your brand or your client's behavior, you know that you
Yeah.
are setting the right precedent.
Right.
Yeah, it's super interesting. And oh, and I think your point about being laser focused on the customer needs, but it's also being laser focused on who you are as a brand, and
Yeah.
understanding your place and value for that customer, and being able to communicate that in a way that is resonant. I mean, look, I know authenticity is kind of an overused word quite often, but it really is about the brand being comfortable in its own skin, and being able to meet the customer where they are in the way that they are. So
I think like things like authenticity start to sound like tropes when they're viewed as, again, like, oh, we're our competitive advantage is that we're authentic. Like, authenticity is table stakes. People can tell when you're lying. Like
yeah,
you
yeah,
if
you're
you're
unique just like everybody else.
right, yeah, like everyone has to just. It's like trying to make like a more like stand up like a moral benefit of just being truthful and honest, and expecting that to be I guess it's a difference maker if your entire marketplace is full of lies, but I think for the most part, you should just start at a point of authenticity, right?
Yeah.
Like it's
Integrity.
integrity,
Can we
yeah,
just
like
not put that on our core values? Can you just have
yeah,
Yes.
just don't be untruthful.
Yeah. Don't be a jerk.
Don't be a jerk. This is brass tacks.
Our values are being nice to everyone,
Right.
not effective.
Or at least being honest.
Right.
We'll just be honest. Even if we're not nice, we're at least honest about
Yeah, that's right.
it.
Yeah, I think it's also clear that you guys take your own medicine. You guys have, I think, multiple years of one of the best places to work in our industry.
Having been there and visited, I will say, like, how you do one thing is how you do everything.
Right.
I loved just experiencing your culture and how your employee experience and your office and the bobbleheads and Champagne Thursday. Like, take us into your world a little bit and behind the scenes of the Firehouse culture, and how you're challenging the convention every day.
Yeah, I think you mentioned we were at the top of that. They just listed 24, but we were also in the top 25 in the 2 years prior. And it's not coincidental that that timing sort of aligned with the pandemic. The reality is, during that period of time, we didn't have as many client demands, and it allowed us to do something that we thought was really important, which is to turn our focus inward and to ask our people, what do you need from us right now in a time when I think they were under all kinds of duress? And the reality is, what we heard is, hey, they needed support. What does support look like? It's got a whole lot of components. Sure, there's a functional, we revamped our benefits, we gave folks what they needed from that perspective. But there's a lot more to it than that. I think there's a community sense to it. And even when we were separate, we did a lot to sort of foster that sense of interaction and community, because that is ultimately a key part, we believe, of well being, of satisfaction. And there's a psychological component to it, right? I think the thing that we can do for our people that is most meaningful is give them the tools, the information to be in control of their own careers, their own development pathways, what comes next for them and what they need. Um, I think certainly during that period of time, although I believe it's true perennially, but during that period of time when things felt so disrupted, that sense of control was the most valuable thing that we could give back in a lot of ways. And I think that had a lot to do with listening, and responding had a lot to do with why we ended up being named that by Ad Age.
Yeah, and I'll just chime in and say there's a there's an honesty and a we try to not have a lot of the games and politics and that kind of stuff that happen here. I mean, those things are going to happen, but it's we try very hard not to enable them. And I think that sense of community and that sense of trust and that sense of honesty and forthrightness that we try and bring helps people feel stabilized and on their not they're not always on their heels wondering what's going to come next. And so but yeah, we do have, internal mechanisms, whether it's, MVP of the year and teammate of the year bobbleheads that we give out, and we have Champagne Thursdays, the last Thursday of every month, to try and have people connect with one another, because we all get head down, and we don't necessarily always know what the person next to us is doing. So we raise a glass to the work that everyone does.
And it
But
sounds like you have
y-
cake served quite often as well.
Hey, that helps.
well, we don't mind our beverages and our feeding times that we do this. But at the end of the day, I think we just try and do the right thing. I think that phrase is uttered a lot around here, is what's the right thing to do. And that applies to us internally, that applies to us externally. I mean, we take almost a fiduciary like duty to our clients to make the best decisions possible on both their behalf and ours. And that sense of transparency, it is, I think, really helps cement those relationships and allow us to be able to just cut through the BS and just focus on the task at hand and do it as best as we possibly can.
Yeah, we have another phrase that floats around here internally. There's a sign in one of our conference rooms that sums it up pretty well. It says, work hard and don't be a dick.
That's so you, Steve.
Somehow I end up saying it a lot.
So it's good. It's easy to remember. It's perfect. I think the agency world is, it's high stress. It's fast paced. There's a lot of expectations, and I'm
Yeah.
curious how you support, the team's wellness, and like what the environment really looks like to keep your people well and healthy in those high stakes environments.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's certainly benefits that we added that skew that way, whether it's subsidized gym membership or flexible PTO or whatever. But like I said before, I think that what's meaningful there is so much deeper. You talk about Champagne Thursday. It is more than a social occasion. It is a way to applaud, recognize the right behaviors, to reinforce the values of the organization, to make sure that we ultimately are cohesive and single-minded. And I think those kinds of things, right, create a sense of comfort. The organization, you know what they value, you know what good performance looks like. And I think all those things really help anchor people in a sense of what we're about and what stability feels like.
Yeah. Um, you mentioned what we're doing sort of internally or in our business to challenge our own conventions. I think one of the things, Steve mentioned earlier, this idea of strategy first. And, I think a lot of ad agencies, marketing companies are very quick to react. But we've got another thing we always say, ready, fire, aim is no path to success. So, what we try and do is if we take just a minute to think about the problem in front of us and what we need to do and where we need to go, then we save ourselves a lot of time on the back end from having to redo it. So we would much prefer to get smart. How we are compensated by clients is very different. The way that we operate on a value-based system where we'll give you a number and that number doesn't change unless for some reason the scope changes. This idea of charging by the hour is a bit of a fallacy because it's not about outcomes, it's about effort. And we believe that our clients are looking for outcomes when it comes to that stuff. So there are a lot of those kinds of things that we sort of push against in our own industry. Certainly agencies have a knock of some bad behavior at times, and it's caused some trust issues. But we believe that in order to be successful, we have to fundamentally start to change the client agency relationship and have it be balanced and not this constant struggle back and forth to be either in our favor or their favor. How about we just decide that we can both, go forward and work together and get to a great place? And that's a super, I mean, it seems simple, but we feel like it's a more honest place to be because, we need to win together in order for us both to survive.
Totally.
Love that.
At least a couple of times a year at the gathering, Mandy will get the whole crew together and we will do like a movement and breath work session. And it is like, as somebody who had never done that stuff before, I've obviously breathed before, but not in such a
Not so intentionally.
Not so intentionally. Man, it's like there's all sorts of things whether you're an agency, whether you're a client, whether you're an experienced company like we are, like it's high pressure to work right now in general. Everyone is experiencing that sense of great change. Everybody is experiencing that sense of pressure, and I think you have to do something to cut through it and come back to that human level. Whether it's champagnes, which that gets my vote, but like we should have you guys out for one of our breathwork exercises.
Yeah, we'll do it at the gathering.
Yeah,
our breath exercises are mostly hyperventilating.
It is like hyperventilating. It's intentional hyperventilating, but it's very effective.
But what it speaks loudly, and what it really spoke to when you told me about Champagne Thursdays. Again, I love me some champagne, but it actually just really represented the spirit of celebration and acknowledgement. Yeah. And I think we have to slow down and pause and celebrate progress. Mm-hmm. And come together, and like the expectations, there's always an endless to-do list. There's so much more, but when we come together and we acknowledge, like, look at how far we've come. And I always think instead of creating to-do lists, we need to create done lists, because we forget about all the things that we've already done, right? And it adds up and adds up. And
success list.
The success list. And that's what spoke very loudly at your team. And when we came to see your offices, is like, you really pause to acknowledge the work. And I think that as creators and creatives, a part of your team, that's motivating. That's an exciting place to come to work every day, is feeling acknowledged and seen, right?
And it's challenging the more things become remote or virtual. You guys know as well, it's challenging to create those kind of meaningful connections between people, and doesn't mean it can't be done, because people have done it, but it just takes more effort and more intentionality to make sure that it happens.
Well, I think one of the great things about the champagne format we do, as opposed to it being a top down, hey, this is what leadership thinks is great, it is a bottom up, and everybody gets a chance to contribute to that and recognize the performance of people around them. And I think that participative nature is so much richer than something that just comes down at you.
Yeah. And in that instance, the mechanics of it, we have an email address set up where people can send in their compliments and kudos and, all that kind of stuff to Steve and I. And then at that point, we're just the deliverer of the vibe of everyone else. And 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 Steve and I mean, we both, I mean, sometimes it can get emotional. It can get emotional either with promotions or success or overcoming obstacles. And it's super cool. It's really it's a great bit. You know, I hope it continues for a long time here. And
Yeah, I was going to say funny insider information on me. I don't get emotional about the bad stuff, but when I get proud, I weep
yeah,
very easily.
yeah. Steve is known as the crier between us, but it's always for good things.
So Owen and I are like privy to these exact details, but for our listeners, let's just spell it out and share like what is the Champagne Thursday? Why is it there? And like
Yeah, what is the ritual?
let's inspire others with this ritual so that they can take that back to their teams and culture and say, how could we do something like this too?
Sure. Like Tripp said, once a month, we've got an email set up, and throughout the month, people can email it. But certainly, as we approach Champagne Thursday, we send out a call for, hey, what's good? We're celebrating this month. Whose contribution needs to be recognized? And people can email in, and I will tell you, we get some of the funniest things you've ever heard. You put a bunch of creatives together, and there are some mighty fun toasts. But the important thing is not just they're fun, but that they all have real meaning. And it is funny because we give out corks to the folks each month that we think are standouts. And those corks, which are essentially trash, collect in people's offices and become a symbol of pride, a symbol of appreciation from the team around them. So you take something that normally would go in the garbage and it becomes our most valued trophy.
Yeah, it's pretty great. And the other piece of it is that we have a number of groups within the agency that rotate sort of hosting the Champagne Thursday. So it's up to them to come up with the theme and the menu and all of the decorations and accoutrement for the event, and they put that on, and there's always something fun with that. Maybe there's a game afterwards, but it really becomes a nice little cultural connection point for us. And it is interesting. I think you guys saw when you walk the halls, you see people's corks either on their desks or on their windowsills. And it's funny how you can take something that normally would be discarded and you can put meaning behind it, and attach you know a moment in time to it that people are very proud of. And I think that's awesome.
It's so good. We need these rituals more than ever right now. Something positive to look forward to, a coming together, a connection, and just really like lifting spirits and acknowledging each other and the work. I think it's so great. So I still want to borrow this and bring it into our team, something like this.
Fine.
I was so inspired by it. I love it.
That's awesome.
Speaking of connection, we are connecting in Dallas next month, May
Yes.
8th. We've got a event that we are co-hosting together right in your neck of the woods. Like maybe you guys could share a bit about it. What are you excited about? What are you looking forward to? Talk to us about the theme of bravery and what it means from your vantage point.
Well, as Tripp said earlier, I think one of the things that we've always responded to about the gathering is the thing we're excited about this event, which is getting a lot of like-minded people playing to win together and sharing good content, thought leadership. Beyond that, it's just going to be a fun evening. I certainly hope that folks can join us. We're going to do a little bit of a happy hour, some great speakers panels, little music, little speakeasy. It'll be a great night, but more than anything, it'll be a great group of people that I think similarly and have similar goals.
Yeah, and I'm excited about the prospect. I mean, certainly with the beginnings of this partnership and the idea of kind of helping spread the word of the gathering and the content, the great content and events that you guys put on. And for us having a little bit of a Texas flair in it, and being able to have some Texas brands and some thought leadership all come together. And as Steve said, we're look to be a great host and put on a great event and share the things that we all care about.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love it. I'm excited too. And I'm always excited to bring leaders together and like-minded people together. I think it can be so easy to just be busy and be behind your computer trying to do all the work, and especially right now, lots of pressures, lots of changes, but when we come together and we're shoulder to shoulder, peer to peer, conversation to conversation, heart to heart, all that, you realize that there's other people experiencing the same thing. We can solve challenges together and really inspire creativity and what's next. So I'm really excited for the experience. It's going to be awesome to collaborate with you guys on that.
And it's all about bravery. It's what does it take to be brave? What's the benefit of being brave in 2025 when you go to market? And what does winning look like? Which ties into our overall conversation that we're having with our audience through the whole year here.
Yeah, and I think we've kind of touched on it, but maybe just as a final question, our theme for 2025 is winning the future together. And when I say that, like, what do you think is really required to be a leader in 2025 and to win the future?
I think that word together is a key part of it. I mean, certainly in our business, the only way that we win is together. The only way we win is with effective partnerships. And that goes back to knowing who you're partnering with and making sure you've got alignment on goals, alignment on values. Um, because I think that's the foundation from which you can create winning behaviors, winning strategies. But you've got to start there. You've got to start with it together.
Yeah, from there, I think we touched on it at the very beginning, the ability to be nimble, to look ahead, to not be afraid of what's in front of you, and to just say, you know what, we're going to do this, and we're going to do it well. And after that, it's locking arms with those partners you've decided to jump with and getting after it.
It's funny. You said lock arms. I was going to say hold hands. It is true. When you are being brave, right? It does help to have somebody to hold on to and to do it together with, somebody you trust.
Yeah.
So good. You guys are awesome. Dynamic duo. We're really excited for everything that's to come. Excited to see you in Dallas. Excited to have you and the team out to the gathering this year. Thank you so much for doing this today and for your time. And we'll see you in Texas.
Yeah, thanks so much. Yeah, we're looking forward to it, and it's going to be a great year for everybody.
100%.
May the 8th will be here soon.
It's just around the corner. Right on. Awesome. Thanks, guys.
All right. Thank you. Take care.